My name is Sarah Nazim, and I'm a certified stress and resilience coach who is on a mission to equip perpetually single women with the tools to not only overcome rejection fast, but to help them build a fulfilling life. My own personal struggles with modern dating has inspired me to empower other women to act in their best interest instead of following unproductive narratives that are working against them. There are too many resources out there today promoting division between men and women, and it's only encouraging isolation and lifelong singlehood. I'm here to put a stop to that. We need to talk about the root causes of our misery so that we can encourage healthier relationships. Complaining about dating culture often results in women pointing the finger at men and men pointing the finger back at women. The truth is that we have all lost our way, and we need to discuss the impact that modern dating culture is having on our emotional and physical well-being. Today, we're going to be discussing the pitfalls of modern dating and hookup culture and how women can empower themselves to influence change in the dating culture. To discuss this topic, I have a special guest with me today by the name of Ellie Holt. She is an incredibly wise and talented writer at Evie Magazine. If you haven't heard of this publication, I highly suggest you check it out, as they really speak to women from a lived experience rather than parroting mainstream feminist propaganda. I will link to her articles so that you can check them out for yourself. Now, the reason I reached out to Ellie is because her and I share a lot of the same concerns in regards to modern dating culture and the effect it's having on society. I think we're going to have a much needed conversation today that I hope you will find to be thought-provoking. So thanks so much for joining me today, Ellie.
Thanks, Sarah, for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have this conversation because I think it's long overdue, for sure. So I guess why don't we start by discussing the fact that most people are not really dating with intention, but merely for pleasure. And I think it's making it incredibly difficult for women who are looking for marriage. And I think the question here is, how did we get here, right? How do we get to this point? So maybe we could start at the beginning and talking about, how the sexual revolution sort of sought to level the playing field by, liberating women from monogamy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way I kind of like to think of feminism, of course, we have some different timelines. We have some different waves. We have our first wave, and then depending on how you're looking at the timeline, we're now maybe in the fourth wave of feminism. So we know that the first wave was women getting the right to vote, which was obviously incredibly important and a great stride forward. And then we kind of move into the second and third wave, where we get figures like Betty Friedan, who's the writer of The Feminine Mystique, and we kind of start to see the tone very much shift in a very different direction, away from not necessarily the rights of women, but more into something. I think this is what Kate Millett, another prominent feminist writer, calls sexual politics, which are more about these sort of interpersonal sort of hierarchical power structures between men and women.
Yeah.
And so she starts talking about things like marriage as explicitly oppressive to women, or which is also some of the same things that Simone de Beauvoir was saying, and Gloria Steinem, who is saying things like a woman needs a man, like a fish needs a bicycle. And of course, Andrea Dworkin was saying things along the lines, or I think one of her more famous lines was that all heterosexual sex was rape due to existing power structures between men and women. So we see a very different take on this. And this is something like that maybe this is a little, I don't know, fancy or something, but I think of this as like, so the French philosopher Rousseau has this idea that man is born free, but he's everywhere in change, being like, you're born to be free and liberated, but it's society that holds you down. And I think where we are now, fourth wave feminism, is sort of this female centric idea of that, where it's like, women are born free, they're born to be liberated, they're born to be sexually liberated, but it's the patriarchy that keeps you down. It's internalized misogyny that keeps you down. If we can just we can dismantle that, then women will finally be happy.
Yeah.
Sort of this.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that you said there. And I think a big part of that too is I think there's a struggle. I think coming from a lived experience, obviously as a woman growing up, I was always torn between, okay, this is what society is telling me I should do, but this is how I feel. And I think a lot of women right now in the dating scene, they just go along with it. They think, well, in order for me to attract a man, I need to behave this way, or I need to, do certain things for me to be desirable. And so I think the issue with feminism is that it's saying one thing, but I think it's not actually what women want. So that's just my take on that. And definitely, I think we've strayed very far from actually standing up for women's rights. And we're sort of, I guess, almost going against our best interests. I don't know. It's crazy. I think this movement has, in a way, given rise to what we call today, what most know to be toxic masculinity. And likewise, I think the counter to that is very much mainstream feminism. I wrote an article recently on my blog called "The Pitfalls of Modern Dating and Hookup Culture," which I've linked to in my bio. And it really gets into the contrast between what women complain about, toxic masculinity, and how they are actually participating in the same behavior that they claim to abhor, right? So it's almost like the way that I sort of view it is that modern feminism is basically telling women that in order to be empowered, you have to emulate the immaturity of men. I don't know, that's sort of what I see the messaging to be, as opposed to encouraging both men and women to value mutual respect. You know what I mean? So
definitely. I love the comparison that you draw. I feel like that is just so insightful, that the same behavior that we are criticizing in men, we're promoting as super empowering to women.
Exactly. And the thing is, mainstream feminists always bring up the issue of the double standard when it comes to sexuality. But in my opinion, this should have been resolved by telling men to smarten up rather than telling women to emulate the immaturity, right? So this is what has led us to where we are today, where men no longer have incentive to commit. And I think we've all been led down a destructive path, and we need to wake up. So I think it's best that we not blame it all on men, but also acknowledge that we've all sort of been fed a narrative. I think mainstream media in general, Playboy on one hand, and then you have Cosmopolitan on the other hand, basically promoting the same ideologies to both men and women, right? So I think, unfortunately, mass media does have huge influence on our, I guess, our thoughts and how we choose to behave in society. So
yeah, I could definitely. And I really liked what you said about the double standard. Yeah. I see that as like one thing that I find kind of interesting about this double standard argument that we hear from feminists a lot, where it's like, well, just typically, or for the audience who maybe is unaware, the double standard is this idea that when women are penalized for the same behavior that men are just sort of culturally allowed to, or condoned or able to get away with. And for example, that men, it's totally fine for them to just rack up sexual partners, but women are criticized for that same behavior or slut shame for it. And that's sort of what a lot of feminists call the double standard. But I think what you really hit the nail on the head and what you said is that the double standard really could be debunked in one easy step. It's all about incentive structures. Women, if you don't like the way that men are acting, create an incentive structure for them to not act that way.
Exactly. And also I think there's just on YouTube, I kind of like to look into like some of the I guess the male channels. I know there's like one channel I think called The Roommates. I don't remember the name, but anyway, there are actually a lot of men who are pushing back against the sort of toxic masculinity narrative. And I think it's important for both genders to realize that what we're doing now is not working. It's not working for men. It's not working for women. So, so I guess if when I really look at the two, I like to call them movements, we essentially are promoting extreme independence, we're promoting emotional repression, and we're promoting promiscuity. So, to break this down, what do I mean by the encouragement of extreme independence? Well, it's the I don't need anyone mentality, commonly referred to as strong and independent. Well, geez, where did we get that idea from? Again, that's typically what we hear of men, right? Men often believe in this sort of independent mentality. And so I don't really think that that's something that women just woke up one day and were like, yeah, I just don't need anyone. I don't need a man. It's not really natural is basically what I'm trying to say here. And the second point is the encouragement of emotional repression. So like men, women have been told to neglect their emotional needs, so much so that most women are too afraid to vocalize their desire for solid commitment and their aversion to hookup culture. And this is all out of fear of being alienated or viewed as a prude. And totally. Men also actually face the same dilemma though, right? Men are also encouraged to repress their emotions. They're supposed to act like they don't need women. So it's just the contrasts are glaring, right? And the last point is the encouragement of promiscuity. So it's the idea that pleasure and convenience are to be put ahead of self-control and real intimacy. But women, like men, have been sold on the idea that they can survive off a paycheck and casual relationships. And, that might work for some, but in reality, it's not practical or healthy. And, the issue with promiscuity, in my opinion, is not the act itself. There's no shame in sex or the female form, but it's the consequences of it. I was reading that according to the CDC, 1 in every 5 Americans has a sexually transmitted infection. And, STIs can result in infertility, other long-term effects, as well as higher chances of contracting HIV. And there's also growing concern of antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea, known as super gonorrhea. I mean, not to mention that STIs can also cause complications during pregnancy and complications to unborn babies. Now, people often will be like, oh, well, you can just take medication. No, are you really going to put an entire society at risk because you can't control yourself? To me, I just think we've gotten to a point of insanity in our society where this is considered just, normal.
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. I think another thing is that our culture has very much normalized this narrative that safe sex, and we're always talking about safe sex, and that safe sex equals using condoms, using the pill. And that is a tiny piece of what constitutes quote unquote safe sex. We're not recognizing the fact that sex is an inherently vulnerable act.
Exactly.
There is always going to be some risk associated with it. And that, you can use all the condoms, you can use all the pills, you can take all the tests, but that doesn't completely eliminate any kind of risk. I mean, there's tons of, I think women are not really being given the tools to equip themselves or the knowledge to understand the innate biological realities of how women, mentally and emotionally respond to sex, and that condoms can't protect you from, the pill cannot protect you from.
Exactly. I agree. And I think that on both ends of the spectrum, both men and women, I think we really have to seriously look at the consequences of what this lifestyle is doing to us and how that's affecting generations. You know what I mean? It's just not a joke anymore. It's not something we can just brush to the side and say, oh, it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. Right. So definitely. And, speaking from my own, personal experience, I faced a lot of rejection, I think, because of the shallowness of our culture. And I blamed myself for a lot of it, when in reality, my expectations were not too high. I think the problem all along was that societal standards have been too low. Of all my years on the dating scene, very few men ever took the time to really get to know me as a person, or to open meaningful discussions about life. It's all been just very transactional. And, the amount of times that I've been told, I would sleep with you, but I don't want to date you. is astronomical. You know, that's what I grew up having to deal with. Like, and the thing is, this is sort of a reality I think that a lot of women face. And it's like, my value to these men was based on how I could pleasure them, basically. Like, they essentially viewed me as an object. And so this is why, for me, when women willingly objectify themselves, I fail to understand like how that's helping them or other women or other women. You know, I think it's only contributing to a destructive narrative that's only encouraging and perpetuating shallowness, you know? It's like we're placing physical attraction, chemistry, and pleasure as the sole purpose of a relationship. And that is what's creating this dysfunction.
I definitely hear that. And I think that what you said is just really insightful just then. But I also kind of want to go back and focus for a minute on what you were saying about how, you know, men were sort of treating dating as like, how can I get what I want out of this? And in a way, I really seem to see this sort of, you know, girl power, the female empowerment, the sexual liberation movement is almost in a way this sort of like performative revenge against men for that, where it's like, well, I'm tired of being treated like a sex object, so now watch me. And I really see modern dating is sort of revolving around what my partner can do for me. This is exactly what you just said. I'm kind of just rather than how we can work together. And it focuses on commitment as something, or maybe even a lack of commitment as transactional rather than a covenant between two people. And I think hookup culture is a kind of obvious result of subverting commitment. It's in a way, it's really completely antithetical to commitment. I mean, if commitment is this unifying act between men and women, then the direct denial or even aversion to commitment, you know, as we see through casual intimacy or hookup culture, is in a way this direct rebuke of unity between genders. And so, you know, I fail to see how we really are going to be able to move forward and build social cohesion when our entire dating culture is sort of predicated on this direct rebuke of commitment.
Yeah, exactly. And it just like, it doesn't work. Like, women can't just go along with the narrative when deep down inside, it's like they want commitment. Like, and I know this because we've all done it. We're all just, you know, you like someone, you're like, okay, well, I'll just give them what they want because maybe they'll change their mind. But no, it does not work that way, you know, and you're you're absolutely right. You can't sustain a healthy relationship based on superficialities. Immature relationships are based on the what can I get mentality, whereas a mature relationship is based on what can I give. And that's what I think a lot of people, you know, fail to recognize, for sure. And yeah, I mean, I get that, like, there's also the argument that we have different priorities, but it's like, what do you value in life though? Like, what do you mean by different priorities? Like, shouldn't we be valuing family? Shouldn't we be valuing healthy relationships? You know, at the end of the day, a paycheck is not going to keep you warm at night. Going home to an empty apartment is not going to keep you warm at night. And that applies to both men and women, right? It's not just women. This is for both genders.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think this is something I'm kind of concerned about.
Yeah.
We're looking at society is the way that we've really subverted marriage into being, first of all, it's kind of like I think one thing I have a problem with, and I was thinking about this the other day, was we're treating marriage and family and not marriage and family as these sort of like two equal choices that are just totally comparable to one another. Like, oh, it's just what I want versus, you know, this. And I don't know. I think that's kind of a hard one because obviously, you know, you don't have to get married. And I have no desire to revert back to some sort of society where women who aren't married are looked down upon.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or for men, I'm not interested in that. But I'm also concerned about this sort of attitude we have with marriage where it's sort of just, you know, it's take it or leave it. It's not really that important. Men are sort of obsolete. Families are sort of obsolete. It's just, you know, it's just a choice. And it doesn't really improve your life. It's just, you know, it's kind of like, do I want chocolate or vanilla ice cream as opposed to to, you know, something so transformative to our society. And I think in your article I was reading, you make some really great points about the fact that that, you know, mainstream feminism has kind of glamorized the single life.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a big issue. And I agree with you. Like, I'm not here to say that, okay, you can't live on your own, or that you have to get married, or that you have to have children. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I think the problem is that we are pushing the narrative of single life or singlehood so much that I think it's actually the cause of why so many people are miserable, because we're not actually working through, you know, how to actually build and sustain healthy relationships. We're just saying, oh, this is difficult, so forget it. And that's not how we solve problems in life. We have to look at things critically and decide, okay, what's the next best course of action for us to be happy, right? And I think if we were to take that approach, it might actually encourage more people to want to get into relationships and, you know, to, I don't know, just add another layer of value to their life, you know? So definitely, I think we've both made some incredible points that I hope listeners can chime in on. Obviously, in the comments, feel free to share your opinion as well. And I think for this first section of our conversation, I think the point here is, you know, I don't want younger women to go down the same path that earlier generations did, because I think it's destructive. You know, I want to empower this new generation to see what went wrong and to stand firm on their desire for real intimacy. I think we can get into the consequences of, you know, the ultra progressive sort of free love movement. I think, contrary to what many believe, I personally don't believe that the sexual liberation movement freed us. I think it gave us a false sense of empowerment. You know, as a result, we have people who are lonely and miserable. We have, as mentioned before, rising STI rates, and, you know, the consequences of that, unstable relationships causing mental and emotional distress. We have delayed age of marriage and parenthood because men have no incentive to commit anymore, along with the fertility issues that come with that. Family breakdown leading to single parenthood, lifelong singlehood, objectification. Obviously, there's the topic of abortions, which I know is highly controversial, but I think it's not something we can really sweep under the rug from a morality perspective. So yeah, like, what are your thoughts on all of these things? I mean, I think these are all pretty serious consequences to sex that came as a result of the sexual liberation movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I focus on, particularly in the article that I wrote that you reference, is especially this family breakdown and this sort of idea that marriage and family and commitment and unity between the genders is this sort of patriarchal oppressive hierarchy that we need to dismantle and walk away from because it's bad. And what huge, and I cannot underscore this enough, huge lie and mistake that is, because the people who get hurt by that are women and children. And feminism professes that it's looking to protect women and protect children, to look out for its best interests. And this is the absolute opposite of what happens when we decide to break down the family. And I mean, maybe I'll just get on my little soapbox here for a second. But one of the statistics that I think we all, as you know, as civic minded members of society, we need to keep this statistic in mind. We need to have this memorized. We need to know this, is that children who grow up in single parent households without a dad in the household are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and to commit crimes. They're 9 times more likely to drop out of school and 20 times more likely to go to prison. This hurts women, this hurts children, this hurts the next generation. And the family breakdown and father absence is one of the biggest issues facing what I would say Western society right now, and it cannot be ignored. And I know it sometimes gets to be this uncomfortable conversation, but we're not willing to have an honest conversation about the root of the issue. We really can't have a serious conversation about solutions.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with that. And I think this is where I really encourage women to really think about everything that we're saying critically, and, you know, act in your best interest, right? I mean, look at the broader consequences that this is having on society, as opposed to merely just, propagating sort of the mainstream narrative that really isn't benefiting you. So that's kind of the message that I really want. I want women to get out of this. And on the topic also of fertility, there is actually a new study out of Rutgers University that finds that men actually have a ticking biological clock just like women. And if they make babies in their 40s, it can negatively impact the health of their partners and their babies. So that's, I think, a very interesting point to add to that, because it's, I guess, often assumed that men really have no responsibility in any of this. But according to this study, guys who start later can cause risk to the mother and the baby. So I think that's kind of a big deal. We're often encouraging women to freeze their eggs, and now it's being recommended that men freeze their sperm before their 35th birthday. So I don't think we can ignore biological realities anymore. Just to add to your point, I think it's important for both sexes to realize the role that we play in society. So it's not just about the individual anymore. It's about looking at the broader implications of our actions.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also just going to quickly add that I think a lot of times, so when we hear about intersectional feminism, I think we're often talking about how feminism and maybe fighting for women's rights and how it intersects with these sort of other social justice issues is sort of maybe like a broad generalized explanation of this kind of the intersectionality feminist movement. And so one thing I find that really interesting about that is that this intersectional feminism claims to be that we're fighting against war, crime, poverty, and suffering. Like those are the the general ones, right? But if you're seeking to subvert the nuclear family, you are actively working in favor of those things, frankly. And
that is a good point.
I'm really concerned about the fact that we so casually dismiss the family, and then we're over here being so concerned about poverty, about dropping out of school, of violence against women, when there's a direct pipeline here.
Exactly. It's all interconnected. And that's the thing. We live in an interdependent ecology. And so in order for us to come up with plausible solutions, we have to really step back and look at the big picture. I think we can get into the reasons why I think relationships are failing, aside from everything that we've discussed already. And I think it's important for us to highlight the fact that, a lack of morality, lack of standards is a big one. And there's also no emphasis on self-development, right? So usually when you listen to dating advice, it's always like, oh, well, what to say, what to wear. Like these are all just, again, superficial things that are not conducive to relationships. We've sworn off morals because it's apparently uncool to be a decent human being. And I think the further we stray from codes of conduct that are created to protect us, the more pain and suffering, we experience in this life. I've written more about this. If you want to read, I guess, more about why relationships are failing, click the link in my bio, because I get into detail on why morality is an issue. And of course, secondly, the importance of self-development. I mean, it not only enriches our personal lives, but it also has positive impact on the collective. So that's sort of my take on why relationships are failing. I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I absolutely, I really, I love your point about standards. And I think one thing that I personally see when I'm kind of looking at my friends who are dating, or just maybe just even the sort of media content around us, like, you know, Cosmo and things like that,
Yeah.
I see a lot of emphasis on girls. They want to find a guy who's Prince Charming. He's, you know, the 666, what, it's the six pack, the six figure salary,
Yeah.
tall. He needs to meet all these requirements, but I am perfect just the way I am. I don't have to change. I, by virtue of being a woman, am just perfectly fine the way I am. And if you want me to change in any sort of way, well, you're just, you know, you're the patriarchy and you're bigoted, and you're the one who needs to change, not me.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
such a toxic attitude.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, like this, you're gonna have a very hard time finding a relationship that's gonna make you happy if this is your outlook. Like I have girlfriends, I feel like, where it's constantly looking for somebody who's going to check these boxes for me, but maybe, and this isn't, you know, like a critique of my friends or that they're bad or in any sort of way, but that then they're not looking for, well, what do I need to make myself worthy of the partner that I think I deserve or that I want in life?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's just like a healthy attitude to have when dating. It's not just about me finding the perfect person. It's, well, what can I do to develop myself into the person who is worthy of the person that I want?
Exactly. It's very much a two-way street. And of course, we all have different upbringings. We all have different experiences. And so it's very important, I think, again, I don't know what they teach in schools, but I think a big part of, you know, encouraging healthy relationships is promoting the importance of developing yourself and, you know, learning how to reflect on the past, you know, learning from your past mistakes. How can I be a better person? I think in general, in order for civil society to sustain itself, there has to be a set of morals, standards, and self-development, because without that, again, all of the things that we complain about are just going to be perpetuated, right? So, again, that's more food for thought. I think the way forward is that, you know, the current dating culture really needs to change. And this will only happen when we collectively decide to raise our standards and enforce rules that will work towards cultivating healthy relationships. I think as women, we need to stop conforming to casual dating ideals out of fear of being left behind, and instead make our boundaries clear. You know, there is power in numbers, which is why it's crucial that we all grow a backbone and stop lying to ourselves about what it is that we want. I think the result of our participation in the toxic dating culture is that we have freed men of all pressure to get serious, resulting in delayed marriage and parenthood, which comes with its share of fertility issues. And for many, our shallow culture has resulted in lifelong singlehood. So the cost of us not upholding our intuitive desire for deep connection is tragic, to say the least. I would personally rather live in a society with more happy couples and families than the miserable path that we're on now. I mean, we really have to ask ourselves, what is life without meaningful connection? So if we want men to take accountability for their actions, we have to do the same. You know, men wouldn't be able to bounce from one woman to the next if we didn't allow it to be so easy. I think physical intimacy should be based around the understanding that it's reserved for committed men who value our soul and not just our body. And I think until we have this mutual consensus between the sexes, I think we're going to struggle to maintain relationships and marriages, right? One tip that I have for women is that one way you can confidently reject casual relationships is by simply saying, sorry, that doesn't work for me. I think we need to encourage ourselves and other women to be assertive, to stand up for what's best for us. So that's sort of where I think the way forward is. I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that.
I really like that super simple line. Like that doesn't work for me. And I think that's really, I really like that you're giving that, putting that out there. And I think it's really simple and very accessible to people to just simply say that. And also, I think it conveys a lot. Like it doesn't work. I mean, and I'm not going to engage in something that is this isn't working. So I don't know what I was going to say, but yes, I like that line. I like that line.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, this is how women can influence change in the dating culture, is staying true to what works for you. Right. And the reason I think this is crucial is because I think a lot of women are not doing what's best for them. There are too many women who, again, they're too afraid to come out and say, this doesn't work for me. And so I want to empower you today to stand up and say, that doesn't work for me. And this is the only way that we are collectively going to be able to change things and set standards, set boundaries, and hopefully encourage healthier conversations between men and women.
Yeah, maybe just I was just gonna kind of quickly add what I really like what you're saying, that my goal is never to make women feel bad or tell them that they're bad or you shouldn't do this or here's all these rules and if you don't follow them then you're bad, you don't deserve love or anything, because I think that's something I want to walk away from, this idea that if you didn't go by the playbook here, now you're bad and you should feel overwhelmed with shame, because that's not my desire at all. My only desire is I really want to empower women and equip them and help equip them with the tools that they need to actually succeed and feel good about their relationships. And my concern is just that right now we're not equipping women with the tools to succeed. And I think that I also really quickly wanted to just address that. I think that there's a large maybe population of women out there that maybe would be quick to disagree and say, well, I mean, I'm not looking for a relationship, or I like casual sex. It feels good. And so I don't feel like what you're saying is for me.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I just really kind of wanted to say was that, so feminists condemn this double standard in the name of equality and fairness, in which sort of the only way for women to achieve true equality is for men and women to be treated the same by society. And on the surface, I totally get this. I understand the frustration that can be experienced by the seeming unfairness of this. Like, really, should men and women not be able to behave the same sexually without fear of condemnation? I totally get this. I'm on board. But I think this goes back to what you were saying, which was that women do, in fact, have the opportunity to break down the double standard if they want to. Yeah. We do not have to give away sex when it doesn't work for us.
Exactly.
We do not have to incentivize men to continue to behave in a way that doesn't work for us. If we don't like the way that, if we think that, if we want to de-incentivize men acting like players and jerks and so on and so forth, then we need to stop sleeping with them. That's what we do, male behavior. So instead of being upset, instead of, the sort of like performative revenge or, well, because they can do it, I'm going to do it too. Yeah. This doesn't solve anything. This doesn't help us create a more cohesive world with stronger social cohesion and commitment in it. And so I think, would our dating climate not benefit from less promiscuity instead of more, where we're trying to outdo each other? In many ways, casual sex really hurts relationships rather than helps us. And I think this is just a reiteration of you doing an excellent job of saying.
No, I completely agree with that. I think we have to take into account mind, body, soul. I mean, we are holistic beings. And I think we have to accept that sometimes there is objective truth, right? As much as we sometimes want things to not be that way, sometimes what's in our best interest is, maybe it is tradition, right? Maybe we shouldn't throw out all things that we deem to be tradition, or things that I think people have associated maybe with religion, and they view religion as being horrible. So they're like, okay, well, I don't need to follow morals anymore. Or, you know what I mean? Like there's just so much confusion going on that's just leading to so much, I think, chaos within the individual. And I totally agree with everything that you're saying. I don't think either of us are telling women, oh, you must start a family, you must get married, you must do that. Right. But it's just, unfortunately, a lot of women are repressing their emotions, they're repressing their true desires. And that's kind of what we wanted to highlight today, bring that to light and tell you, you do not need to repress your true desires. You need to actually act on those desires, assert yourself. And that's how things can change, right? As you mentioned, we're not going to change things by just tit for tat. And this tit for tat is just actually making things worse. So, if we truly want to be empowered women, I think we might want to stop stealing from the men's handbook and start writing our own. I think ignoring our biological differences is not enforcing equality. I think it's actually silencing women. It's not a battle of the sexes. I think this is a wake-up call for us all to not only take accountability for our actions, but to ask ourselves what it is that we truly value in this life. I can only imagine our dysfunctional dating culture leading to unnecessary health complications and just broken families, not a euphoric utopia, which unfortunately most people think that that's where things are headed. I personally disagree. I think if anything, we need to understand that our individual actions have collective consequences. And the sooner we realize this, I think the sooner we can all just smarten up, basically.
I was loving what you were saying. Absolutely. I was thinking to myself that there was sort of this space, maybe, I don't know, in the last few decades where it was very much like, yeah, women should, women should just, act however they like, and they have the right to behave however they like. And then it started to move into this space of, well, actually the family is bad, and like you shouldn't have a family, and marriage is regressive. And I feel like that is what radicalized me. I feel like I didn't come in with this sort of like radicalized opinion of women need to be barefoot and pregnant. I'm going to shove this down your throat. Like, no, that's not my objective at all. But then once I started hearing these sort of ideas about marriage is bad and the family is bad, and this is all patriarchal and you're being oppressed by the family, then I was like, no. Now I'm going to push back. Marriage is good. So I feel like if I have any last word, it is marriage is good. Marriage and the family are transformative to our society. And I think the breakdown of the family is the fundamental root at a lot of these social ills that we're really out here trying to seek justice and solutions for. So if we really want to look at creating this quote unquote utopia, which of course, means no place, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But we're trying to look for, so maybe that was a bad example. So it's really trying to create a better world. We need to be reinforcing the importance of the family.
Yeah, exactly. And I completely agree with that. And I think we need to, just to sort of reiterate what you said, is like move away from this idea that like, women are like, oh, well, if men can do this, I can. No, it's we need to tell men, actually, that behavior isn't helping you and it's not helping me either. Yes. Right. So it's understanding that we need mutual respect. We need to have, again, as I mentioned before, when I was talking about morality is not just beneficial to women, it's also beneficial to men. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. Again, I'm going to link to your articles in my bio so that listeners can go ahead and read through all of it. And of course, if you like what you're reading, do yourself and other women a favor and share these articles with your friends and your family, and help, spread this movement, help and encourage other women to assert what's best for them. So yeah, thank you so much. I hope we will keep in touch and hopefully we'll chat again. This was so much fun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah, for having me. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, so I guess that concludes our conversation. Of course, for everybody listening, feel free to chime in with your thoughts in the comments. I look forward to reading them and hopefully sharing them. So take care, guys.